it's hard to get
it's
any
hard to
individual
get in,
leverage.
it's very hard to get
and yet
in.
you say it's better now, I guess, from the
It
point
is
of view of
better.
technology.
Technology is better, the industry is better, because the odds of getting a hit is maybe 1,000,000 to 1. But if you get a hit today, I mean, the amount of records that you can sell, because of the way distribution has been put together and the way the media is today, the significance of the hit is much greater than it was when we were, I mean, 35 years ago, 40 years ago.
So there's a kind of trade-off.
Yeah. So, and you have to change with the times. Everything
It
changes.
sounds like you're a very forward-thinking individual and an optimist, if I might just judge from the little.
Well, I think you have to be optimistic in life, and you have to adjust to changes. And reality is that you can be a part of the change. You can be part of the thinking process to create change, and that's where I would think that we would like to be, and what we've tried to do is to be in the forefront of not being a follower.
There's been so much criticism of the music industry, I mean, of late. I mean, so it's interesting.
But it always has been, though.
Yeah?
You know, even when Elvis Presley, rock and roll, first started, they would criticize rock and roll, they criticized blues, rhythm and blues. It was a time they didn't like jazz. I mean, so it's always those naysayers or whatever the case might be. But the thing that must be realized is that music is only a reflection of the times. And when people don't like the music, then they don't like the way society is, because the artists and the writers, such as Gamble and Huff, when we wrote songs about what we saw and what we felt that was going on in the world and in our lives and other people's lives. And I think the young writers and producers today, I think they're doing an excellent job in portraying in records what is actually going on in our communities and in our country.
What do you like particularly, or perhaps like isn't the word, but what do you think in particular is emblematic of that?
Well, like hip-hop music, so it's a whole culture in the hip-hop culture. And I believe that the hip-hop culture is a reflection of the times that we're living in. Take, for example, profanity, for an example. And many people have been really hard on the hip-hop culture because there's so much profanity in it. But you must remember that there was a time when profanity has always been around. I mean, everybody knows profanity, but there were certain standards in society where profanity would not be used around women, it wouldn't be used around adults and your parents and so forth and whatever. And what has happened is, somewhere along the line, that standard has been compromised. Whether it's the FCC or whether it's radio, whether it's television, the movies or whatever, to allow this medium to come into entertainment, profanity.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, do you think?
Well, I think that now that it is out, it's like the genie is out of the bottle. I think that what it has done is there's no way possible to put it back in. So you have to look at it and say, why did this happen, and how can we deal with it? And I think what it has done, it has elevated and emphasized the lower nature of the human being. And through this human experience, what happens is, if you can contain the lower nature, you can have a better life. But I think that they have let this genie out of the bottle, and therefore what you have is a profane society from the music, which the society is already profane, and the music is only a reflection of that.
You don't think there's a sense in which the music contains the profanity and maybe can, by giving it structure or form or lyricism, it infuses it with something higher than just what it is?
Well, as I said, they have let that genie, what you call it, or that demon out of the box. And so it has its job to do, profanity, which is a violent language, you know, and it has its place. Profanity has its place, and I think that that profanity is something that can help to to alleviate physical violence. It's verbal violence.
Okay.
It's a verbal language where when someone generally used profanity, you would say, wow, this person is really angry, you know, and then you would be able to settle your differences or whatever and not become something physical. But today, when profanity has become the normal, you wouldn't know whether a person was angry or not. So
you've lost your
so
measuring
therefore,
rod.
what happens is, because of the society being so profane and the lower nature being exposed, you have a much more violent society because you have no buffer between physical violence and the mental consciousness that people are dealing with.
That's fascinating. I would like to pursue this further, but I have
right.
other. I mean, afterward, I will talk to you more about this. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your collaboration with Leon Huff, and I've always been fascinated by the way people collaborate in music. Could you talk a little bit about how you two worked together to create the songs, the great songs that you did create?
Well, Leon Huff and I, we've been working together for about 42, maybe 43 years now. And when we first met, we met in Center City at the Shuey Building, and we were talking about songs. You know, he was a songwriter and I was a songwriter, and we decided to collaborate together. And from that first setting, that when we sat down and wrote songs, we've been writing songs ever since. And because it too was one of those things that destiny put us together, because who knew that we would be so prolific together in writing, because it was fun. It's fun working with Huff. Me and Huff we are friends, you know, we're brothers, and we have tremendous respect for each other. That's why we've been able to work together all of these years. We're partners in business.
What's the dynamic with that you work? I mean,
well, Huff is a keyboard player. He plays piano. He's a master piano player, and I'm a lyricist. So
what comes first?
Well, sometimes it all comes together. You know, there is no formula to say what comes first, the chicken or the egg or whatever that. So
you actually you write the songs together?
Well, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
Generally, what we would do is we had an office, and sometimes we would go to Jamaica and write songs where it would be total seclusion, and we just have a piano. We'd have a tape recorder on top of that piano, and Huff and myself, we would sit down and we would dream. We would think and say, well, what can we write about? You know, what's going on in the world? What's going on with love? What's going on with life? And we would laugh and we would joke, and then we would come up with songs, and I'd start singing, and Huff would start playing, and one thing after another, and the tape recorder is constantly running, so that when we come up with something, that we were able to play it back, so that then we would be able to learn it ourselves, because it's basically inspiration, and when inspiration comes, you have to be a vessel to be able to receive it and then give it out, and then you have to learn it yourself. We had to learn the songs ourselves, you know. So
that's fascinating.
So it was a great experience, and it's hard to, it's impossible to describe how.
Well, like any creative
you write
process,
a song. It's
impossible to describe.
It just happens, and that's why I say inspiration is very, very important, to be inspired. And I think Huff and myself, we were inspired not only by music, but we were inspired by the world that we were living in, and the life that we were living, and the people that we were around, and they inspired us to write about our surroundings. And it just so happens that when we wrote a song, that there were millions of other people who were thinking just the way we were, and they went out and
captured by it.
And they agreed with us and bought our records.
Well, right now you're doing something, I mean, I don't know whether you're still writing songs, but you certainly are very much involved in another activity, which is community development. And I wondered, in Philadelphia, so it's interesting that you developed the Philadelphia sound, and now you're thinking much more concretely, I think, about developing the Philadelphia community in certain ways, in terms of housing and schooling in South Philly, where I guess you grew up.
That's my old neighborhood.
That's, Can you tell us about, I mean, that sounds quite an endeavor. What does it involve?
you go back to the music a little bit, and there was a theme that we used in our music called a message in the music.
Mm-hmm.
And most of our songs were, there were two kind of songs that Huff and myself we wrote. Some of them had social messages, and then others were great love songs.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that had social messages to it really were reflective of the devastation that was happening and is happening in many of our communities, in particular the African American community all around America. And we had an opportunity to travel all over this country, and every city that we went to, I used to go and look at the African American communities, and what I saw was complete devastation of a people, of a neighborhood, of a quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So in the mid-'70s, we wrote a song called Let's Clean Up the Ghetto. And this song became a program where we instituted programs in the community of cleaning your neighborhoods, cleaning up your block, educational programs during the summer for youth. And so the work that we're doing at Universal Companies in South Philadelphia is really an extension of the music. I call it living the music now, and to make the music, make it a reality. The music was so powerful that the universal plan that we created is a direct descendant of that music, where in this country, in America, I believe that our communities, the African American communities, can do better than what they're doing. But it's going to take people, individuals, to sacrifice and to contribute to the upliftment of the African American community. And the way we do it at Universal, we have done a lot of research, and we believe that not only abandoned houses and vacant lots and trash, and that's part of it. And Universal, we're really focusing on education. Mm-hmm. We asked ourselves the question is, how in the world did these communities get in this shape? And when you sift through all of the mess and the stuff that you hear every day, you find that it is education. Mm-hmm. That is the #1 priority of Universal Company. So we're involved in education. We're working with the school district. Paul Vallis has been a wonderful.
He's a wonderful.
He's been a good
asset.
partner
He's
for
working
us.
With Drexel too. Drexel's working with him.
Right,
as well.
and the SRC, Jim Nevels and Dan Whalen. We're
Yeah.
working with. We're happy for the changes that's being made in education, mm-hmm. where there are choices. Such as charter schools, and we are even interested in any other changes that could happen that would give the community more choices for education. And so we are working with them. We have an education management company that we're managing 3 schools in South Philadelphia. We're concentrating on South Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Our goal is to create a model that has at its goal education as its #1 priority, but we're also dealing with all the other systems that make up a community, such as economics, where mm-hmm. many African Americans don't have businesses in their own community, and so we're working. We have a business support center, and so on, and real estate development is also a part of it.
It sounds wonderful, and sounds like your ability to synthesize on so many mm-hmm. levels. I mean, starting with your music, right. moving out to the entrepreneurial aspect of your mm-hmm. music, and now moving out to, as you put it, living the music in Philadelphia is really inspiring. I think you are a wonderful asset to this community, and I'm really honored to have spoken to you today. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today for the Drexel interview.